Hey guys, how are ya? Um, my name's Dan Wolf, and we're here in the pub attached to the patio of my house, which is, I think, fitting for the occasion. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about today about the impact that the Irish diaspora has had historically, both a cultural and a historical impact. We're going to touch on a song called Spanish Ladies, and how that, as an Irish tune, you can see how it's been taken and altered and evolved through time. And then we're going to talk about the Irish, like I said, historically, their impact. And we're going to talk about how they impacted both the United States and Mexico through the Mexican-American War. And there's an accompanying song with that that I don't have the music for in front of me, but the other two songs we are going to sing together. And then John Riley is the final song, and we're going to have that. That's when we all get together with the real band and we get everybody. I want to have all that done because there's banjo and everything to it. It's a whole thing. All right. So the first song that I want to talk about is Spanish Ladies, and so we first see that on record, published in like 1767, and it's published in a book of sea shanties, and it's widely sung at the time and by British sailors. And you got to remember that Ireland is officially still part of England at the time, and so Irish sailors and British sailors all being together is not an unusual thing. A lot of times, these days, culturally, we see them, especially those of us who study Ireland and all that, see them as distinctly different cultures. But at the time, they're all pretty much one and the same. There's that. It's homogenous culturally as it pertains to society, not culturally as you get into like the Gaeltachts and more things like that. But England is still pretty agrarian at the time. England, not as much, obviously. But anyway, all that aside, so yeah, obviously, so Irishmen would learn that, and they moved out to Canada. And so first I'm gonna sing Spanish Ladies. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the song sings about. So it's a shanty. And what's important to know is a shanty is something that you're singing while you're doing things on the ship. It's not a song that you sing when you're at rest. It's not a song that you're singing recreationally. It's a song that you sing while you're doing it. So it usually has a very solid meter. It's not going to be in something weird like Rocky Road to Dublin. In the merry month of June, from my home. That's 9/8. You're not going to see something that's complicated like that in a sea shanty, because everyone needs to be doing a lot of, this is going to be kind of their tempo to work to, and so you want to have a solid beat that they can, a predictable beat that they can work along with. Like when you're working out at the gym and you have music on, it's going to pump you up a little bit. It's pretty much the same thing. So it's in a minor key, which I think is interesting, and it does have a little like eerie feel to it. But you'll notice a lot of shipping, a lot of ship terminology. One of the verses, and I'm gonna sing it all to you, but I want to say it so when I sing, it's not the first time you hear it. One of the verses says, "We'll hove our ship to the wind and southwest, boys. We'll hove our ship to deep soundings to take, sorry, because they're taking soundings. 'Twas 45 fathoms and a white sandy bottom. And we squared our main yard arm up channel did take." So they're talking about navigating the English Channel. And so yeah, like I said, so it's in I sing it in E minor. I think in my head it's in E minor. Yeah, it's E minor. I don't know. I can play the whistle for it, but it helps you put there. So yeah, it's in E minor. And it's technically considered a lament because it can be done at a slower pace, and sometimes it is. But I put more of a oomph to it. So it starts. Farewell and adieu to you, Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you daughters of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail for old England, and we hope in a short time to see you again. And that's the introductory verse, and so now we're going to move into the chorus. We'll rant and we'll roar like true English sailors. We'll rant and we'll roar along the salt sea until we strike soundings in the channel of old England, from Ushant to Scilly be 35 leagues. And so those are also, and you notice a lot of times, especially in this kind of music, you see a lot of place names. And so especially when you're hearing a lot of these songs, because these songs are sung, you got to realize they're sung by these British sailors, and all of them almost are going to be going out of London or out of Liverpool, and so you're similarly, seeing a lot of the same waterways as you navigate out to the Atlantic, and so a lot of these really common waypoints, and so they're going to show up in songs, and so as you sing them to people, and then, oh, that's the one I heard about when you got, new recruits on board and all that. So that song, and so, okay, and so then the second verse, the one we talked about before. We'll hove our ship to the wind southwest, boys. We'll hove our ship to deep soundings to take. Was 45 fathoms and a white sandy bottom, and we squared our main yard arm up channel did make. Back to the chorus. We'll rant and we'll roar like true English sailors. We'll rant and we'll roar all on the salt sea until we strike soundings in the channel of old England, from Ushant to Scilly be 35 leagues. And then the last verse, and the Spanish Ladies goes on for a while. They actually have it where some versions of the song actually have it going from place names out of England, and so you have it down to the Channel, down to the north of France, down to the north of Spain, and those verses will name coastal cities along the way, so it's almost going through the whole thing. But I'm not going to sing any of those because we'll be here for days, because there's like 11 of them, 12 depending again on where you're from. But the last verse, and it's something that I sing when I sing Rant and Roar, and it's when we sing it in pubs. It's a great raise your glasses song. Now let every man drink up his full bumper. Now let every man drink up his full glass. We'll drink and be jolly and drown melancholy. And here's to the health of each true-hearted lass. Oh, we'll rant and we'll roar like true Irish sailors. Sorry, that's how I normally sing it. I'm stuck to it. We'll rant and we'll roar all on salt sea until we strike soundings in the channel of old England. From Ushant to Scilly be 35 leagues. And so that comes out in 1765-ish, give or take. 5 or 10 years. And so when we see the next version that we're going to talk about is from Newfoundland, which is latitudinally the same line of latitude, so they're pretty much just going west across the Atlantic. Boom, they're in Canada, and Newfoundland's pop the first place you hit, so you get a lot of Irish settlers there. And so the next song we sing we call Rant and Roar, is also known as the Rhines and the Pitmans. That was first adapted by a Newfoundland. He was a minister for culture, and so he ended up actually converting a lot of these songs, and also collecting them too. He himself wasn't the major agent for change. Him collecting it was, but he did add some verses. Like he had a part in this song, and so it's got a whole different tone to it too, because it's shifted to a major key now. Now it's played in D. And now I have the whistle, so it's going to sound even prettier. And it's now more about being a brash young sailor and all the pretty girls. So it says farewell and adieu. It's so funny singing these back to back. And I should have done the other one first, because every time you Spanish Ladies first, I always want to go in the minor key. Hang on, let me play it real quick, and then I'll get it in my head. Ye daughters of Valen. So Valen's an island, east coast of Canada. Ye daughters of Valen, O'Darren and Bresk, Foxhole and Bruley. So now we've got Canadian place names. So you see how in that same tradition, as it moves and as it migrates, so now we've got a new place that these songs haven't been heard before. So now you see these settlers start to take root and start to take ownership of that song and start to change it to their own present situations. What's funny is that you see some of these songs that are also taken further inland, and there are some songs where they talk about crossing the Great Western Sea. They call it it changes to the Great Western Plain. So it's very interesting how this music, which does, carries a heavy emotional connotation with so many people, from this culture, and it's interesting to see that carries through, through the spirit of the music and through the descendants as well. So anyway, so the song I'm going to sing for you now is Rant and Roar, also known as the Ryans and the Pitmans. Now, the Ryans and the Pitmans have different lyrics, and it's about a guy. We don't know why it's called the Ryans and the Pitmans, because there's no mention of the Ryans outside of the title of the song. And the Pitman it's about sailor or captain. His name is Pitman, and he's gonna talk about all the girls he's gonna see once he gets back, and it's a whole thing. So I mean, it's a similar feeling, but a different but a different expression of it. So yeah, so this is going to be Rant and Roar. This is just, again, this is about a brash young sailor who's really enjoying life on the sea. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Newfoundlanders. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we strikes bottom inside the two sunkers. When straight from the channel to Toslow we'll go. I'm a son of a sea cook, I'm a cook and a trader. I can dance, I can sing, I can reef the main boom. I can handle a jigger, I cuts a fine figure whenever I gets in a boat standing room. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Newfoundlanders. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we strikes bottom inside the two sunkers. When straight through the channel to Toslow we'll go. Farewell and adieu to ye young maids of Valen, O'Darren and Bresk, Foxhole and Bruley. I'm bound further westward to the wall with the hole in. I can't marry all, or it's yoky I'll be. Oh, we'll rant and we'll roar like true Newfoundlanders. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we strikes bottom inside the two sunkers. When straight through the channel to Toslow we'll go. Now let every man drink up his full bumper. Now let every man drink up his full glass. Let's drink and be jolly and drown melancholy. And here's to the health of each true-hearted lass. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Newfoundlanders. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we strikes bottom inside the two sunkers. When straight from the channel to Toslow we'll go. So that is that one. So you see the transposition to the major key does has a much brighter feel to it, and that's just a common thing known about in music theory, is that the minor key is for suspense and for horror movies, and your resolution, your major keys are for your triumphant returns, and if you can transition from one to the other, well then you've got yourself a theme song. Anyway, so that is the cultural aspect. So you can really see how that impact really has a lasting has a lasting impression. Like, it's not even like, oh, I can kind of see how the two of them are together. Like, no, you've changed it to a major key, and you've changed up the words a little bit. So I really like to use that song as an example. The second thing I want to talk about was John Riley. When we talk about the impact of the Irish diaspora. And we can talk about it in Western culture, how it happens over in America. So John Riley comes over in 1845-ish is when he comes over to the United States and enlists. So like I tell a lot of these stories, and so I always try to explain that, you know, Ireland at this point in time still is very agrarian. And so you get a lot of these guys who come over to, you know, America, and they're ready to go to work, but they're used to, you know, tending cattle and farming and, you know, watching, you know, sheep and all that sort of stuff. So in an industrialized city like New York, how you doing? Welcome. Oh my. I guess that's one of the downsides of recording in your own neighborhood, is that the bass is just really loud sometimes when cars drive by. Anyway, so I'm going to attempt to continue to do this. So John Riley comes over in 1845, and so, like I said, the Irish have trouble assimilating in because they only have agrarian skill sets. They are pretty. I'm gonna put them high on